The 1960s didn't just give us hippies, moon landings, and spy thrillers. It gave us some of the weirdest, boldest, and most mind-bending science fiction ever put on screen. Forget the idea that old sci-fi is slow or outdated. These movies didn't just entertain, they rewired how audiences thought about the future, technology, and even humanity itself. But which ones still pack a punch today? Stick around, because some of these films will take you places you never expected. 2001, A Space Odyssey 1968. This isn't just a movie, it's a cosmic trip that changed cinema forever. Stanley Kubrick didn't want to make another sci-fi adventure, he wanted to build a cathedral to the unknown. 2001 takes you from prehistoric apes smashing bones to astronauts floating through the silence of space, all scored with haunting classical music. And then there's HAL 9000, the smooth-talking computer who calmly murders the crew. Terrifying because it feels eerily plausible even today. When it premiered, critics were split. Some called it slow, pretentious, even boring. Others said it was a revelation. Audiences lined up, some walked out, and others sat in stunned silence, unsure what they had just witnessed. By the end, with that kaleidoscopic Stargate sequence and the birth of the Star Child, viewers were left wondering if they'd seen a movie or had a religious experience. The visuals were so groundbreaking that NASA engineers admitted Kubrick's version of space travel looked more realistic than their actual test footage. And while most sci-fi ages, like milk, 2001 still looks fresh, clean, and unsettling. It's not just worth watching, it's essential. Every science fiction film since has either tried to copy it, rebel against it, or quietly admitted defeat. If you want to know where modern science fiction really began, this is the genesis point. Pure cinema, pure mystery, pure awe. Planet of the Apes 1968. You know the ending. Everyone knows the ending. But here's the thing. When audiences first saw Planet of the Apes in 1968, it was a nuclear bomb dropped on the genre. Charlton Heston, gruff and scowling, crash lands on a strange planet where apes talk, humans are treated like animals, and society has been flipped upside down. It wasn't just the rubber ape masks or the desert wastelands that got people talking. It was the social commentary. Racism, class hierarchy, and fear of nuclear annihilation, all wrapped up in a pulpy adventure about gorillas with rifles. Critics thought it would be campy nonsense, but instead it became a massive hit and a cultural talking point. And that final reveal? That broken Statue of Liberty rising from the sand? It left audiences gasping, shouting, even debating as they left theaters. Suddenly, sci-fi wasn't just about ray guns and monsters. It could be deadly serious, political, and shocking. Planet of the Apes didn't just launch a franchise, it rewrote the playbook. Its DNA is in every dystopian film that followed, from Blade Runner to The Matrix. Rewatch it today, and the costumes may look dated, but the sting of its message still hits hard. It's proof that a twist ending can shake the world. Fahrenheit 451, 1966. Imagine a world where books are outlawed. Firemen don't put out flames, they start them. That's the chilling setup of Fahrenheit 451, Francois Truffaut's adaptation of Ray Bradbury's classic novel. Released in the middle of the Cold War, when censorship and fear of ideas were all too real, it struck like a match to dry paper. Oscar Werner plays Montag, the fireman who starts questioning why he's burning books in the first place. Julie Christie, in a dual role, represents both conformity and rebellion, depending on which character you're watching. The film oozes an eerie calm, with sterile suburban streets hiding the rot of a society terrified of free thought. What makes it stick is its haunting simplicity. No flashy explosions, no epic space battles. Just the terrifying idea that a culture can erase itself by choosing ignorance over knowledge. The visuals, sleek fire trucks, flames licking away precious pages, are unforgettable. At the time, critics weren't sure what to make of it. Some thought it was too cold, too European in style. But watch it today, and you'll see how eerily close it feels to modern debates over censorship, media manipulation, and cultural control. Fahrenheit 451 isn't a dusty artifact. It's a warning that still burns hot. Fantastic Voyage, 1966. Only in the 60s could a studio greenlight this. A group of scientists are shrunk down to microscopic size, injected into a human body, and sent on a literal voyage through the bloodstream to destroy a blood clot. It sounds insane, and it is, but Fantastic Voyage turned that madness into one of the most visually inventive sci-fi films of the decade. The cast, led by Stephen Boyd and Raquel Welch, navigate a surreal inner world of giant red blood cells, glowing neurons, and swirling plasma. The sets were wild, mixing psychedelic colors with anatomical detail. For audiences in 1966, it was like stepping into a biology textbook on LSD. The real genius was how it blended hard science with pulpy thrills. Yes, the mini-submarine looks clunky now, but the creativity behind imagining the human body as an alien landscape is still jaw-dropping. The film swept up Oscars for its effects, and critics praised its imagination even when the dialogue clunked. More than that, it sparked a wave of imitators. Cartoons, parodies, even medical dramas cribbed from its concept. Without Fantastic Voyage, we might never have gotten everything from inner space to kids' educational shows teaching biology with adventure flair. It's a trip worth taking, even today. Just don't think too hard about the science, or you might give yourself a headache. Barbarella, 1968. If 2001 was the cathedral of sci-fi, Barbarella was the lava lamp in the corner. This is Jane Fonda in her most unforgettable role, a wide-eyed space traveler stumbling through one bizarre adventure after another, from killer dolls with sharp teeth to angel companions with clipped wings. It's camp, it's colorful, and it's absolutely unhinged. Directed by Roger Vadim, the movie didn't aim for scientific realism. Instead, it embraced the psychedelic energy of the decade. Every frame looks like a pop art painting exploded onto the screen, furry walls, outrageous costumes, and gleaming futuristic sets. Critics at the time didn't know what to make of it. Some laughed it off as nonsense, others saw it as a surrealist fantasy ahead of its time. What makes it still watchable today is its sheer audacity. Most science fiction tried to predict the future. Barbarella didn't care about predictions. It wanted to dazzle, shock, and amuse. And while it became a cult hit rather than a mainstream smash, its influence is everywhere, from comic books to music videos. Even modern space operas owe a debt to its anything-goes style. You don't watch Barbarella for logic. You watch it for the ride, and what a wild, glittering ride it still is. The Time Machine, 1960. Before Doctor Who made time travel fashionable, there was George Pal's The Time Machine, a film that dragged audiences across centuries in a single breath. Based on H.G. Wells's groundbreaking novel, it opened the decade with a blast of wonder and dread. Rod Taylor stars as the unnamed time traveler who builds a brass and leather contraption that looks part Victorian parlor furniture, part cosmic engine. The moment he pushes that lever and watches the world outside race forward in time, it's cinematic magic. The film takes us from the comforts of Edwardian England to a far-flung future where humanity has split into two horrifying paths: the docile Eloi, living like sheep in paradise, and the monstrous Morlocks, who lurk underground waiting to feed. The visuals might look quaint now, but in 1960, audiences were stunned by the practical effects. Buildings rose and crumbled before their eyes. Flowers bloomed and withered in seconds. Time itself became a spectacle. More than just spectacle, though, it carried a warning. Wells imagined a future where technology and class division didn't elevate humanity, but instead fractured it. Watching it today, the themes still cut close. How societies collapse when they forget progress must be balanced with compassion. It won an Academy Award for its effects, but its real legacy is inspiring generations of time travel stories. Without this film, would we even have the blueprint for how cinema visualizes time itself? Doubtful. The Time Machine wasn't just ahead of its time. It was time, condensed, stretched, and weaponized for the screen. Village of the Damned 1960. What's scarier than alien invasions, giant monsters, or doomsday weapons? How? About children with glowing eyes who can read your thoughts? That's Village of the Damned, a British sci-fi thriller that quietly became one of the creepiest films of the decade. It starts with a village in England suddenly falling into unconsciousness, every inhabitant collapsing at the same time. When they wake, nothing seems wrong. Until months later, the women give birth to eerily identical children. Blonde-haired, piercing-eyed, emotionless kids who seem to act as one. They're polite at first, but you know something's off. By the time the children begin controlling minds and forcing deadly accidents, it's clear humanity is dealing with an alien invasion hidden inside the most innocent package possible. George Sanders leads the cast, playing a rational man forced to confront an irrational terror. The tension builds slowly, but when those glowing eyes flash on screen, it's pure nightmare fuel. No monsters, no spaceships, just children staring at you like predators. The film tapped into Cold War paranoia, the idea that enemies could infiltrate your home, your family, even your own offspring. It became so unsettling that it was banned in some regions and sparked debates about whether it went too far. Today, Village of the Damned is still unsettling precisely because it's so restrained. No gore, no special effects overload, just the suggestion that the future belongs to something cold and inhuman. The fact it spawned sequels and remakes is proof of how deeply it carved itself into our collective fears. Watch it alone, and you might never look at a playground the same way again. The Day the Earth Caught Fire, 1961. This one doesn't have aliens, robots, or trips to other planets. Instead, it has something scarier. Us? The Day the Earth Caught Fire is a British sci-fi drama about human arrogance literally setting the world on fire. The premise is devastatingly simple. Nuclear tests knock Earth off its axis, tilting its orbit closer to the Sun. Suddenly, the planet is heating up, crops are failing, and society teeters on collapse. Directed by Val Guest, the film takes a grounded approach. Instead of heroic scientists saving the day with ray guns, we follow journalists in London piecing together the catastrophe. Their newsroom becomes the nerve center of humanity's slow realization that the end is coming. The black and white visuals, drenched in sweaty close-ups and grim cityscapes, make the heat almost palpable. When the skies glow orange and rivers dry up, you believe it. It's a disaster movie before disaster movies were a thing. But it's also biting satire. The film openly criticizes governments for recklessly playing with nuclear fire, mirroring the very real anxiety of the Cold War era. Audiences in 1961 knew the threat wasn't abstract, it was hovering in headlines daily. What makes it stand out today is its ending. Without spoiling the details, let's just say it leaves you dangling between hope and annihilation. Few films of its time dared to be that ambiguous, that bold. The Day the Earth Caught Fire is still a furnace of relevance. Watching it now, in an era of climate fears, feels less like history and more like prophecy. The Last Man on Earth, 1964. Before Will Smith battled mutant hordes in I Am Legend, before Charlton Heston shouted about damn dirty apes, there was Vincent Price wandering a dead world in The Last Man on Earth. This 1964 film, based on Richard Matheson's novel I Am Legend, is often overlooked, but it's one of the bleakest, most atmospheric sci-fi horrors of its time. Price plays Doctor. Robert Morgan, the supposed last survivor of a plague that turned humanity into vampiric, zombie-like creatures. By day, he patrols empty streets, hunting down the infected. By night, he barricades himself in his home, listening to the moans of monsters outside his door. The film is drenched in isolation, with long stretches of silence, broken only by Price's weary narration. What makes it hit so hard is its despair. Morgan isn't a triumphant hero. He's a broken man, clinging to routine, haunted by memories of his lost family. The grainy black and white cinematography adds to the nightmare: abandoned cities, corpses littering the streets, shadows flickering across walls. At the time, critics dismissed it as just another cheap horror import. But looking back, you can see how influential it was. George Romero admitted Night of the Living Dead took cues from it. Without this film, the entire zombie apocalypse genre might look very different. It may not have the budget or polish of later adaptations, but The Last Man on Earth has something those versions lack: raw, unfiltered dread. Watching Vincent Price crumble under the weight of loneliness is still more haunting than any CGI spectacle. Robinson Crusoe on Mars, 1964. Yes, the title sounds silly, but don't let that fool you. Robinson Crusoe on Mars is one of the most imaginative survival stories of the decade. The setup is exactly what it sounds like. An astronaut stranded on the Red Planet must learn how to survive with limited supplies, no help, and an environment designed to kill him at every turn. Paul Manti stars as Commander Draper, a man cut off from Earth and forced to scavenge oxygen, water, and food in a hostile Martian landscape. The film's strength lies in its commitment to detail. Draper improvises ways to recycle air, ration food, and adapt to Martian conditions. It feels less like pulp fantasy and more like a dry run for actual space exploration. What surprises many viewers is how emotional it is. Draper isn't just fighting the elements, he's fighting crushing loneliness. His only companion for much of the film is a monkey, and their relationship becomes strangely moving. Later, the story evolves into something bigger, with alien slavers and interplanetary battles. But at its heart, it's a tale of survival and resilience. The visuals, shot in Utah's rugged landscapes, sell the illusion of Mars better than most glossy CGI even today. And while the film didn't set box offices on fire, it quietly became a cult favorite among astronauts and sci-fi fans alike. Think of it as the 1960s version of The Martian. It's less slick, more earnest, but just as gripping. If you've ever wondered what it would feel like to be truly alone on another world, this film still delivers that gut punch. Seconds, 1966. Imagine getting the chance to start your life over, new face, new identity, new future. Sounds like a dream, right? In seconds, it turns into a nightmare. Directed by John Frankenheimer, this psychological sci-fi gem is as unsettling today as it was in 1966. Rock Hudson plays a middle-aged man trapped in a loveless life who signs up for a mysterious program offering him a complete transformation. They fake his death, surgically alter his appearance, and drop him into a new existence. But the fantasy quickly curdles. Hudson's character finds that his fresh start comes with crushing emptiness, paranoia, and the realization that you can't outrun who you are inside. The black and white cinematography, with its tilted angles and claustrophobic close-ups, makes the whole thing feel like a fever dream. When it premiered at Cannes, audiences booed. Critics didn't know what to do with its bleakness. But over time, it gained a reputation as one of the most daring sci-fi films of the decade. Hudson, usually cast as the charming leading man, delivered one of his most raw performances here, vulnerable, haunted, and tragic. What makes Seconds unforgettable is its refusal to sugarcoat. It doesn't say reinvention will save you. It says reinvention might destroy you. Watching it now, in a culture obsessed with makeovers and second chances, it feels chillingly relevant. It's not flashy, it's not campy, it's a dark mirror reflecting our deepest insecurities. This isn't just a sci-fi film, it's an existential horror story dressed in futuristic clothes. First Men in the Moon, 1964. Leave it to the Brits to turn H.G. Wells's lunar adventure into a colorful spectacle. First Men in the Moon, directed by Nathan Duran, is a charming Technicolor romp that blends whimsy with genuine awe. Unlike the darker, cynical sci-fi of the decade, this one feels almost playful until it doesn't. The story begins with a United Nations lunar landing in the then-future year of 1964. But surprise, when the astronauts step onto the surface, they find evidence that humans had already been there decades earlier. The film then rewinds to show how a quirky scientist, an adventurer, and his fiancée traveled to the moon in a Victorian-era spacecraft coated in cavorite, a gravity-defying substance. What follows is a mix of wonder and dread. The trio encounters an underground civilization of insectoid creatures called selenites, who have advanced technology but a cold, hive-like mentality. The sets are pure 1960s charm, bright colors, lavish miniatures, and stop-motion creatures courtesy of special effects legend Ray Harryhausen. Audiences loved the mix of fantasy and science. Critics were more divided, some finding it too whimsical, others praising its imagination. Watching it today, it feels like a time capsule of how people once dreamed about space before the moon landing became reality. It may not be the darkest or most profound sci-fi of the era, but it has something rare: heart. First Men in the Moon is still worth watching because it reminds us that wonder, childlike, giddy wonder, was once at the core of science fiction. The Andromeda Strain, 1969. Before Outbreak, before Contagion, there was The Andromeda Strain. This Michael Crichton story, adapted in 1969, practically invented the modern medical sci-fi thriller. The setup is pure nightmare fuel. A satellite crashes back to Earth carrying a deadly microscopic organism from space. Within hours, an entire town is dead. A group of scientists is rushed to an underground facility, complete with endless security levels, robotic arms, and sterile labs, to study the alien germ before it spreads. What follows isn't action-packed, but clinical, meticulous, and suffocatingly tense. Director Robert Wise, who had already helmed The Day the Earth Stood Still, leaned into realism, consulting with actual scientists to make sure every detail felt plausible. The result? A film that feels disturbingly authentic. No monsters, no lasers, just people in hazmat suits staring at petri dishes, knowing the wrong move could end the human race. Some viewers in 1969 complained it was too slow, too procedural, but others recognized it as groundbreaking. This was science fiction stripped of fantasy and rooted in cold, hard reality. Its legacy is enormous. Every Outbreak thriller since owes it a debt. Without The Andromeda Strain, would audiences have been ready for the medical horror of Alien or the global panic of modern pandemic films? Probably not. It's the kind of movie that crawls under your skin because it feels like it could actually happen. And that's why it still hits hard today. It, The Terror from Beyond Space. 1960. Let's be clear, this isn't a polished masterpiece. It, The Terror from Beyond Space, is a B-movie, cheap and rough around the edges. But here's the kicker. Without it, we probably wouldn't have Ridley Scott's Alien. Seriously, the plot is almost identical. A rescue mission to Mars brings back the lone survivor of a previous expedition. He swears his crew was wiped out by a creature lurking in the shadows. Nobody believes him until the monster sneaks aboard the spacecraft. One by one, crew members start dying in claustrophobic corridors, stalked by a predator they can't escape. Sound familiar? Yes, the monster looks rubbery. Yes, the dialogue creaks. But the concept, an isolated crew trapped in space with an unstoppable alien hunter, was revolutionary. In 1960, audiences weren't used to sci-fi doubling as horror. The idea that space itself wasn't just cold and lonely, but crawling with things that wanted to eat you, was terrifying. While critics brushed it off as just another B-picture, genre fans noticed. The film's influence trickled forward, inspiring better-known classics that refined its formula. Today, it's fascinating to watch not because it's perfect, but because you can see the DNA of an entire subgenre being born on screen. It, may not top your list of prestige cinema, but it's a time capsule of raw, scrappy imagination. And if you love sci-fi horror, this is the granddaddy that started it all. Quatermass and the Pit, 1967. British sci-fi horror has a special flavor, more cerebral, more unsettling, less about explosions, and more about dread. Quatermass and the Pit is the crown jewel of that tradition. Based on the popular BBC serial, it takes place in London, where construction workers uncover a buried spacecraft. At first, people think it's just a piece of old military hardware. Then they realize it's far older and far stranger. The discovery awakens terrifying psychic phenomena. People start seeing visions, experiencing mass hysteria, even turning violent. Scientists piece together the horrifying possibility. Millions of years ago, aliens interfered with human evolution, planting the seeds of our intelligence, but also our capacity for violence. Humanity itself may be their experiment. For 1967, this was radical stuff. Instead of bug-eyed monsters stomping through cities, Quatermass suggested the real alien invasion already happened, and we're the result. The special effects are modest, but the ideas are enormous. Critics praised its intelligence, and it became a cult favorite among sci-fi fans who craved something deeper than ray guns and rubber suits. Watching it today, it still unnerves. The notion that our darkest impulses might be programmed into us by forces beyond our control is far scarier than any tentacled creature. This is science fiction at its most provocative, challenging what it means to be human. If you want a film that proves the 1960s weren't just about campy adventures, but also deep, unsettling ideas, Quatermass and the Pit is your ticket. So there you have it, 15 sci-fi films from the 1960s that still demand your attention. From Kubrick's Cosmic Visions to Vincent Price's Lonely Apocalypse, from psychedelic space queens to underground alien conspiracies, these movies didn't just survive the test of time, they reshaped it. Which of these do you think holds up the best today? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you enjoyed this trip, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives. The future may be uncertain, but cinema always gives us a glimpse.